Good morning. How are we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I wanted to review the questions and answers for the Ace Jack versus Range mini quiz. And it's a mini quiz because it has under 10 questions, so it's very quick, very easy to get through. And if you haven't already taken it, please pause this now, go take it. I'll leave a link for it in the description box, and then actually go through and check your answers and compare and make sure that you're on the right track with these things. So this quiz is a little bit different than some of my other ones. It's a little bit more complex. We're going to take Ace Jack versus a specific range and see who has range advantage on various textures. So without further ado, let's jump right into the question and answers. Okay, so in this first hand we have Ace Jack suited. Villain called your preflop raise with this range, so deuces to jacks, suited connectors, Ace 10 through Ace Queen, King Jack, King Queen, King 10 suited. So essentially if we pull out Flopzilla, it looks like this. If you've seen me use this software and you're not really sure what the heck it is or how the heck to use it, I have a free full-length video that I would definitely suggest checking out. Go to splitsuit.com/Flopzilla, or I'll leave a link in the description box if that's easier. Definitely a software that I suggest that if you're serious at all, if you play even a little bit, if you study at all, this is like mandatory software. Unfortunately, it's PC only, but it's definitely something that is worthwhile. So this is the range on the left. We plug in our hole cards on the right, which of course is Ace Jack suited, and we have the board, which is Jack 10-7, giving us a backdoor flush draw and of course top pair. So in this scenario, who is ahead? And if you are using Flopzilla and you're trying to practice this kind of stuff, you can actually hide the equity down here. I think it's just right clicking. If you right click over it, it will just give this blue box over top until you hover over it, which makes it really nice for trying to quickly estimate these things and allow you to do a little bit of off-table practice. But in this scenario, even if we don't look at that right away, let's just think about it logically, right? We have Ace Jack, and if our opponent has top pair, obviously we smoke that. We chop against some of the Ace Jacks, but we're doing just fine here in general. And then overall, what else is there? There's a couple combinations of two pair, there are a couple combinations of sets, there's a couple combinations of straights, but looking at the total number of combos, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we just annihilate, right? There's middle pairs, there's weak pairs. We even do very well against the top pairs overall because there's things like Queen Jack, King Jack that we crush. And this is just a spot. We're sure they're going to have equity with varying things, right? Open-ended straight draws, flush draws, all that kind of stuff. But in general, we of course should be able to look at this and very quickly deduce that our Ace Jack is going to definitely be ahead. And if we hover over, that's definitely the case, right? We're ahead here 70-30. So for those that said our Ace Jack is going to be ahead on this flop, you are 100% correct. Hopefully you got this one right. And this is just something that you want to know in general. When you understand range advantage, when you understand who has general edge going into a flop texture, it can really help you formulate whether you want to c-bet or check raise now, whether you want to go for something a little more passive. It will really help you kind of deduce that. Range advantage is extremely important, especially when you're playing against competent opponents. So make sure that you know this kind of stuff. Alright, so jumping into the next one, we have Ace Jack again, of course. Villain 3-bets you preflop with a range of 8s plus, Ace Jack plus, and King Queen, who is ahead on a board of Queen Jack 8 Rainbow. So the large chunk of people said Villain's range, so let's see if that's actually the case. Plugging everything into Flopzilla, the board, our hand Ace Jack suited, and our opponent's range that we assigned of, again, 8s plus, Ace Jack plus, King Queen. Of course, just looking at this raw, again, without even just cheating and looking at the equity down in the bottom right-hand corner, let's really think about it here, right? The queen stuff obviously crushes us. The sets crush us, queens, jacks, and eights. And Ace Jack, of course, we chop with, so there's no equity advantage there. And of course, the overpairs annihilate us as well. So really, the only thing that we crush and do really well against right now is their Ace Jack. Their Ace King, specifically, and then also their 10s and 9s. So overall, again, the large chunk of their range is putting us in a really bad spot, so it's not too difficult to deduce that we are definitely going to be way behind here. And if we look at it right here, the equity of the range is 59, and our hand has 41% equity. So we're not absolutely murdered or smoked by any stretch, but we are definitely behind overall. So yes, Villain's range is definitely ahead in this scenario. All right, this next question we have ace jack suited again. Villain calls your preflop raise with a range very similar to the first one, deuces to jacks, suited connectors, ace 10 to ace queen, king jack, king queen, and king 10 suited. And the question is who's ahead on this flop, and the flop is ace 8 7 with a flush draw. So the large chunk of people said our ace jack is going to be ahead here. Let's see if that's actually true. So playing a Flopzilla, range, board, our hand, who's ahead? Well, think about it real quick. So top pair, of course, we chop against ace jack, we are crushing ace 10, and we are behind ace queen. Okay, fine. And of course, against two pair, we are pretty well behind, and against sets, we are very behind. Okay, but that's only what, 20-ish% of hands. The rest are obviously hands that we just smoke. Pocket pairs below top pair, we're way, way ahead. Middle pairs, weak pairs, all that kind of stuff, we absolutely crush. Flush draws, open and straight draws, gut shots, they do have various amounts of equity, but of course, we're definitely going to be ahead in that scenario. So again, if you're ever confused and you're trying to figure out like, okay, who has advantage here, my hand or their range, you definitely want to be sitting here considering this stuff. Now, this isn't like pure range advantage, because pure range advantage would be your range versus their range, whose is ahead. But when you're playing against someone who's not thinking about your range all that much, they're more focused on their cards and how they're hitting, you don't have to worry so much about what you rep, and you can just play your hand versus their range and use that to your advantage when you're looking at who has advantage in this scenario. So, of course, yes, the people that said that our ace jack is going to be ahead are totally correct. The hand is best 83% of the time, and of course, our hand overall has 74% equity against their 26. So yes, if you said our ace jack is ahead, you are 100% correct. Okay, so this next question is a little bit different, but definitely something that we need to be keeping in mind. So in this situation, villains c-bet the flop with second pair or better and all gut shots or better draws. So gut shots, flush draws, open-ended straight draws, etc. from a range that began with deuces plus, ace 10 plus, king jack plus, and 6-5 suited plus. So who's ahead on the turn? So let's set this up in Flopzilla and start knocking it down. So we have the range that we assigned from preflop, we have the flop, and then we also have our cards, ace jack suited. And then the way that you want to do this is actually a two-step problem. You have to set the range on the flop and then carry that over and see how it continues on the turn. So what you do is you set all the hand categories here, and if you watch the Flopzilla video or you already know how to use Flopzilla, this is pretty basic stuff. But you choose all the hand categories that you think are going to continue. So we're choosing things like gut shots or better, we're choosing things like middle pair or better, and then we're also choosing all these like various kinds of like flush draw plus pair or gut shot plus overcard, all that kind of stuff. And then we click this and make this green. And what this means that it's only going to continue bringing the hands that we just selected into the next street, right? So this includes all of those straight draws, flush draws, pairs that are valuable enough based on our qualifiers, good to go. So the turn is the king of spades, and the question at this point is, who is ahead here? So 71% of people said the villain's range is going to be ahead, and then the other two answers are fairly split between their equal or our ace jack is actually ahead here. So what do you think in this scenario? Well, the king of spades is actually a pretty brutal card because it fills up flush draws, of course. It fills up better two pair, so king jack just got there. And then it also fills up pretty much all of the other draw types, right? King queen, of course, just got there. But also because we included gut shots on the flop, which includes ace king and ace queen, both of those just improved on this card as well. So in this exact scenario, it shouldn't be too difficult to see that we're pretty smoked here. I mean, we beat ace 10, cool. We chop against ace jack unless it has the jack, or unless it has the ace of spades, which of course is going to give it a free roll against us, and everything else is still doing super, super well. So it shouldn't be too difficult once we mouse over this to estimate that yes, villain's range is definitely going to be ahead here. This is a really, really brutal card for us. And if we back up and we untick, I mean, back on the flop, yeah, we were doing super, super well. I mean, even with that qualifier picked off, we were still ahead. But then that king of spades rolls off and it just puts us in a really, really brutal spot. So again, really good information to understand when your hand goes from good to really, really bad. And of course, if the turn card were different, of course your range is still going to, or your hand is still going to be ahead a very large chunk of the time. All right, and then the final question is this one, very similar to the last, looking at a two-step problem. Villain called your c-bet on the flop with second pair or better, and all flush straight draws from a range that began with deuces to queens, ace 10 to ace queen, king 10, king jack, and 5-4 suited plus. Kind of a weird range when you actually think about it. Not 100% sure why that one was originally put in here, just because if it's going to include queens, why would, in their flatting range, wouldn't they also flat king queen? It's kind of awkward. But anyway, this is the range that was originally assigned, and as such, we're due the problem with it. So in this scenario, again, two-step problem. We have their range, the board, our cards, and then we have to do 2 steps in terms of which hands are going to continue against the c-bet, and then how does that get impacted on the turn. So all the things that we're continuing, again, flush draws, open-ended straight draws, no gut shots this time, and then middle pair or better. So that's going to include all second pair, and then also things like sets, 2-pair, top pair, etc. So if we turn this green and look at it real quick, then throw in the turn card, which is the 8 of spades. Perfect. What do you think at this point? So in this scenario, a lot of people said that our ace-jack is still going to be ahead here. And notice that 16% said that villain's range is going to be ahead. And I would say that a lot of people that are going to panic about the villain's range being ahead in this scenario are usually on the nittier side of the spectrum. And what I mean by that is that they're going to look at a card that fills draws, even though this is really like filling very, very weird draws, and it doesn't really fill anything because we didn't include gut shots, right? So 7-9 doesn't get included here unless they have, 7-9 of diamonds, but we didn't even include that in the preflop range. So this doesn't make any 2 pairs, right? Because we didn't think that they would have ace-8 or 10-8 or 6-8 or anything like that. So the 8, all it's doing is it's giving certain hands extra equity, like 10-9, but it's not doing a tremendous amount else. So this is one where you don't have to panic about it too much. And sure, something like Queen-Jack of diamonds now just picked up a 2-way straight draw, I think improve on the 9 or the king, but shy of that, it's not impacting very, very much. So if we hover over, our hand is still best, our hand still has an edge, but it's pretty darn close, right? It's 54-46. So this is just one of those where, like, if you said they're about equal, I'm not gonna not give you some credit for that. So our ace-jack technically ahead, they're roughly equal, they're very, very similar, and villain's range is definitely not ahead in this scenario. Again, if you made a mistake there, just be sure that you're not panicking when straighty or middling cards start coming through, especially when it's not very likely that they either had gut shots that improve with that card, or that it's a card that's just simply not making very many 2 pairs given the original range assumption. So you notice that in this quiz, we use some very, very specific preflop ranges from villain, right? The good news about this is you could go back and test it and say, okay, well, what if in this exact scenario, instead of him calling with that kind of range preflop, what if it was a different range of hands, right? What if they were calling with, I don't know, something a little bit closer to this, right? Maybe you think they're on the wider side of the spectrum. Okay, well, you can do the same kind of analysis, right? If they're improving or they're continuing on the flop with anything that's flush draw, open-ended straight draw, and of course these kind of pairs, middle pair or better, then you can do the same thing, right? When it comes off the 8 of spades, hover over it, and then notice we're still crushing. And that makes sense, right? Because you're looking at this and we're still crushing things like ace-7, ace-deuce, and sure, some hands like ace-7 and ace-9 picked up some extra equity, but we're still doing totally fine. So that's the good news about this kind of work, is that it gives you a starting point, lets you test some of these bare bones basic ones, and then also says, okay, if you want to go a step further, just plug in some different ranges, just plug in some different textures, and then see what you're finding from there. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much for hanging out today, and if you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Hopefully you got 100%, but if you didn't, that's totally okay. Just learn from it, learn the overall thought process and mentality with it, do a little bit of practice, especially if you already own Flopzilla, great thing to use for this kind of work, and then go forward from there. And just for the record, if this kind of stuff is stuff you're interested in, right, you like this range advantage, you like this kind of exploration, getting really technical and really into it, I would definitely suggest this. Go take advantage of the Red Chip Hooker Pro trial. There's a 1-week free trial on there, and I would definitely suggest 2 things. One, we have an entire playlist called Thinking in Ranges that's going to be right up your alley. It looks all through ranges, not only building ranges, but also just how to think in terms of them and understand range advantage from a broad scope look. And then I also have a full video that does really advanced, in-depth, exactly range advantage kind of work. I do my range versus my opponent's range on a board of Ace King 7, very very important stuff and something that I would definitely suggest you check out. Again, it's a free 1-week trial. If you don't like it, no problem, no stress. But if you do, I think you're really going to find a great ROI over on the Red Chip Poker Pro membership. Again, you can find that at redchippoker.com/membership. Check it out. Let me know what you think. So, same as always, if you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, go check out the Pro trial, and I'll see you back soon with a brand new video. In the meantime, good luck out there, and happy grinding.